let's talk about. I mentioned that we're going to talk about blemishes, so let's go right into it. We accept this is Xeris Hakasuv. God does not want blemishes, so that's what's going to be. Kol kohen sheish bo mum, bein mum kavua, bein mum over lo yikanes lemikdash min hamizbeach lefnim. A kohen who has a blemish, whether it's the type of blemish that is, it's going to be permanent, or it's a blemish that is transient, non-permanent. He should not go into the temple anywhere beyond the altar. We saw on the map where that is. There are some Rishonim who disagree with this. I think it's Rashi, for example. No, who says it? Where did I put the note here? Rashi and Rambam say it's Ben Ha'ulam V'Hamizbeach, which is a little bit farther in. They could go even on the north side and the south side of the altar. It means they can't go on the west side of the altar. So that's their limit over here. They shouldn't go there. They should not go to the Parochet, and they should not approach the altar. And if he actually went over this prohibition and he went in, he should be lashed. And Rashi and Ramban also say, no, it should be avad, not just nichnas. He has to actually serve in order to get those lashes. Rambam has a lower standard. He'll lash him even for just going in there. And so in one case, the Rambam has a lower standard. Just going in, there's already a punishment. But the Rambam says there's more off-limit areas. Rashi and Ramban say he has to do more in order to get the punishment, but the off-limit area is smaller. Afal pishalo avad. See? Afal pishalo avad, he gets the lashes, and no, others say no, he has to serve. V'im avad b'hamikdash pasal v'chilel avodato. And everybody agrees that if he does actually serve in the temple, see? If he actually does any of the service, he has desecrated the service. Service doesn't count. The lokeh afal avodah, and he is to be lashed even for that service. Okay, so the Rambam says 2 lashes: one for going into the temple, going to where he shouldn't have gone, and one for actually serving. Shneimar asher yebo mum lo yikrav. Anybody who has a mum should not approach. And we said lo yikrav is always azar karev. Doesn't mean coming close literally. It means performing the sacrificial service. Mipiash lo amdu shazarazo shelo yikrav la avodah. Okay, all forms of keruv, in this case, kirva are service. Remember, azar karev yumat means not that all foreigners who approach should be put to death, like that professor said. It means anybody who's not a kohen who does a kohen service is liable to death at the hands of heaven. No.
Say
well,
that actually, like that he even for walking up past the boundary.
Yeah, he should be located because it says lo yigash. Mikdash lo yavo, okay. Aparochet lo yavo, mizbeach lo yigash, and asher yavomim lo yikrav. Okay, it says 3 verbs are in the Torah, so the Rambam is very consistent. There's the gisha or hagasha, and there's the biat, and then there's the kirva, and they're all biblical terms for what we see here: serving, going to where they shouldn't, touching, etc. V'chein bal mum over pasal v'lokeh. Person with a temporary mum, whatever it may be, he is also invalidated service, and he is to be lashed. Shneimar kol ish asher bo mum lo yikrav. Any man who has a blemish shall not approach. Tradition tells us that this is a warning. Thou shalt not, for who? People, Kohanim specifically, with a transient mum. And these Baalei mum, these blemished Kohanim who serve, they do not get liable to death. It's only lashes. All these mumim, it doesn't matter if they're born with it. Tchilat b'riyато means born with it, congenital. Or they happened to him sometime afterwards. He broke his leg. Could be transient or not. Well, you have to wait for them to go away. If they don't never go away, so he'll never serve in the temple. And we're going to see broken leg is one of them. So nowadays, Baruch Hashem, where people knew about broken legs back in the day, sometimes they could just feel it, that the bone inside is broken. They knew how to set bones. Putting on a basic cast for, let's say, a non-compound fracture is something that people have actually been treating for thousands of years. You could do it. You don't need an X-ray machine to realize, oh, this guy has a broken leg. Just don't touch it. Tie it up in place with a stick and keep it, like that, and it heals. Especially the younger you are, the earlier you break the bone, the more likely it is to heal. And sometimes you could even heal stronger than it was. So they knew about this. Mum kavua kivon shever regel. Okay, broken leg, it ain't getting fixed. Mum kavua. Oh, shever yad, a broken arm. Mum over. What's a classic mum over? Kigon. It says garav o yalefet. Okay, garav o yalefet is a hachazazit. These are splotches on the skin. Sometimes it's a splotch that's much drier than the rest of the skin. Okay, it's like I think not necessarily boils, but it's pretty bad stuff there. Or it could be the kind that's like pussy and wet. Okay, garav and yalefet. One is dry and one is wet. That's how it goes. And not just the blemishes explicitly like this one, garav, yalefet, etc. Shever regel, shever yad. There's some that aren't actually mentioned in the Torah. They're the ones that disqualify Kohanim. It says all the blemishes that you can see on his body. Anyone who has a blemish, even if it's not on the list. Okay, so he has a big gaping cut in his face. Okay, doesn't matter. The examples in the Torah are just that, examples. I want to just make sure I'm staying up to speed here. And they have a note over here saying that's a big machlokas in the Rishonim. How exactly define what's a mum over and what's a mum not? Okay, Rambam says over here, don't forget, it's a mum kavua, but what if it just disappears? What if it somehow heals? So it's gone. So it shows it was a mum over. Fine. Let's see here. Yes. Okay. We're going to get to the three standards here. Anybody here ever tried to bring an animal sacrifice? You have to make sure the animal doesn't have a mum. So the Chazal talk about this, but this isn't our standard nowadays. The Torah was given. It used to be a muminous animal. They say with Noah in Noah's time was missing a whole avar. By the way, an avar is officially a limb, and the way you count it is, at least for a person, avar has to have flesh and bone. If it's the type of, let's say, organ that's entirely of flesh and no bone inside, then it's not considered one of the avarim, halachically speaking. And there's nafkaminas la'alacha of, let's say, we're going to see in Hilchot Tumas Mace. There's a nafkamina. So it means that some of the things that you and I use as, we call it avarim or aver or avar, that are classically referred to as those, are not halachically that. What's the most important examples? Let's say the heart. The heart and the kishkas are not avarim because they have no bone, or etc. The male member also was pointed out by Rabbi Kapach. No bone, so it's not considered an avar for this halacha. No, it has to have bone. See, so we're going to get to that. We'll see that in the Hilchos Torah, God willing, in a few months' time. Okay, let's see here. This halacha, shlosha minei mumim hein. Let's understand this one well. Three types of mumim. Yesh mumim shein poslim hakohen milavod v'abema likarev. There's a type of mum that's common to that could happen in both Kohanim and animals. That disqualify both of them. Animals have lips, animals have eyes, animals have ears, animals have skin. So, and they have legs and arms. So these, when we're going to see this list, which is going to start the next chapter, that's going to be common for, it's in common, animals and people. Okay, it doesn't really matter if we're talking about an animal or person, then it means that a Kohen can serve or the animal cannot be sacrificed. There's some on this list that only disqualify who? Kohanim, people, but do not apply to animals. For example, we're going to see certain types of hairdos and stuff. You're going to see pictures over here. Animals don't have facial hair and head hair like people. So all these pictures here, like the Kohen with a funny beard, or sorry, the funny hairline, not usual male pattern baldness, is disqualified. Goats and cows don't have male pattern baldness that would affect them in these ways, so it doesn't really matter. There's some blemishes that do not disqualify. They still said, the Chazal said, this is a mum, they should not be serving. That is our enactment. So you see here, all these mumim affect Kohanim and don't let them serve. But there's some that also affect animals. There's some that just affect Kohanim, and there's some that are just a sage's institution. Notice there's the sages, apparently, Rambam doesn't list here, mumim that the sages instituted for animals. Okay?
do that anyway.
Yeah, you would, but I'm just saying he doesn't mention it here. Okay, so hold on to that thought. Anybody who has such a blemish that's in common, animals and people. Vavad, and he did serve. Bein b'shogeg, bein b'nizid, whether he was unwitting, he didn't realize he had a mum, or he did it on purpose. Avodato psula, b'imhaya mezid lokeh. If he's had this mum, he knew about it. See, he disqualified his service, and he is to be lashed. The chomi sheish bo mumin amumin hamiyuchadim la'adam. And anybody who has one of these mumin that are unique to people, that's in the second in the group over here. Vavad afal pishu lokeh, even though he is to be lashed, lo chilel avodato. He has not disqualified his service. So the second category doesn't disqualify the service. Okay? Yes, he should be lashed for it. And if it's in the third category, the sages instituted it because it doesn't look right. So he is not to be lashed, and his service is valid. What's the difference between lo chilel avodato and avodato keshera? Avodato keshera apparently means even as he's doing it, it's kosher. Kosher. Okay. Technically, it's this lashon over here, lo chilel avodato, is b'diavad. This is more lechatchila. Okay, is the Rambam implying that? Good question. I don't know what he's getting at, because obviously lechatchila he shouldn't serve. He still has a mum that's marasayin. So in this case, it means it's a less severe language. Avodato keshera. There's no question about it. Ein posel b'adam ela mumin shabagalui. And the only thing that affects a person, a kohen, are they're galui. That means they can be seen on his body. Let's say a kohen, they took out, I don't know, his internal organ. Sometimes they take out a person's pancreas or gallbladder, something like that, right? So that's not a mum. They cut open they took out his appendix, so that leaves a scar. Okay, the scar maybe it's not such a problem, but the fact is that he's missing something inside. They say that Baal Mum should also be in the Sanhedrin. Rav Moshe Feinstein was concerned about a procedure they were doing on his heart, apparently, when he was an older man. So he asked Rav Tendler, is this type of thing that would give me a mum so I couldn't be on the Sanhedrin if I needed to? So don't worry about it. It's not considered a mum according to these halachas. Okay, good. Internal organs, and a mum there. He's missing a kidney. Right? Nowadays, we actually inflict this mum on people because they elect to have it done, because it could save someone else's life. You could get along, you could live with one kidney. And especially if you have a close relative who needs the kidney, so you could add decades to his life by giving your kidney. And we should all hope that we're not put to such a test, but it's a big zchus to donate a kidney, especially you could donate a kidney to a stranger. That might help. The problem is it's less likely to be successful. Nowadays, it's very successful. We have genetic testing and all that. The best likely recipient of a kidney is a close relative. So if you have a close relative, God should give you the strength to do the right thing and donate that kidney. Next, or is Machon Shilo. He's missing his spleen. That's what it is. Whatever it was, some people were missing their spleens. Oh, Shanikvu Me'ab. He has a perforated intestine. All these are internal injuries. They are not mumim. Even if it's so bad that he's gonna die from it, nasa treifa. The Rambam says, Hilchot treifot. It's in the Ma'achos, the Suros, and in Shchita. What's a treifa? A treifut is the animal has an internal blemish that would have killed the animal. I know halachically some are machmir. I think the OU is machmir for this. A treifa chaya. Treifa means internal blemish, but it doesn't mean the animal would have died from it. A treifa could live from it, but the Rambam says treifa means we have a tradition. These types of blemishes or injuries inside the animal, we're going to take out the animal. You happen to slaughter it first, you discovered this, but the animal would not have lived if it had this. So too a person. A person could be a treifa. It means he's already a goner. It just he has some time left because of this internal problem. Avodato keshera. So if you have a kohen who's internally, he doesn't have much time left on the clock because I don't know, he's been whatever it is, he's got some sort of thing. It's ulcerating. I don't know, God, all the terrible things that you don't want to happen. His service is still kosher. Shnemar sheva regular sheva yard. It says once again, fractured arm, fractured leg. Ma elu begalui af kulo kol begalui. These are also exposed. So too anything else that's exposed, but the internal organs, no. The Arel also, this is an interesting one. An Arel is not a moon. Why is that? What is an Arel? Why would you have someone who's an Arel? You never had a bris? It means he's uncircumcised. Basically, they're familiar with diseases like hemophilia. They basically said if the guy had brothers who died shortly after bris milah when they were children, so you know what? The third brother's born, don't give him a bris. That's the best medicine could tell us now. Just play it safe. So you had unfortunate Jews who their whole lives never went through bris milah. Fine. Harehu geven nechar. He is like a ben nechar. Ben nechar doesn't mean just a foreign person. Rambam holds like we say in I think it's a Sifri, in the Medrash Halacha, and in Unkelus. It means a person who's a Meshumad. Okay, it doesn't mean a foreign person, a non-Jew. It means a Jew who is estranged to God. Okay, a renegade Jew. Shnemar kol ben nechar arel lev ve'erel basar. Erel lev ve'erel basar. There's people who are physically circumcised. There are people whose hearts are uncircumcised. There are people who are physically uncircumcised whose hearts are uncircumcised. Circumcising the heart means to remove the Yetzer Hara. So these people who have their foreskins intact are like renegade Jews. And by the way, a renegade Kohen, renegade Jew should not eat Korban Pesach. Can't give a Korban Pesach to a non-Jew, to a Jew who is uncircumcised, or a Jew who is renegade. Right? The Fichach, Arel Shavad, therefore, a uncircumcised Kohen, perfectly Jewish, and he's from, keeps the Torah, he believes in God, he never worship idols. He did the service. He has also invalidated his service, and he is to be lashed. Kizar Shavad, just like any other non-Kohen who served. But he's not liable to death. So the Rambam mentions this here, even though Arilut obviously is not a physical blemish. Adarabba, it's less of a blemish. Where no one ever touched his body is perfectly intact. It's actually, like the Rav said before, a bris is a dangerous thing. The Torah tells us to do something that's dangerous and hurts a little bit, a seemingly cruel act, because that's what God wants from us. But a person would have a Havamina saying, if you're really totally kind, remember Abraham, what was his outstanding midah? Chesed. That's why it's such a big test. Okay, giving Yitzchak the commandment to perform milah wouldn't have been as big a test because he had gvura and yira, strength and fear of God. Abraham had chesed. So to tell him, by the way, do this thing that's potentially cruel to every child basically when he's a week after he's born, that's a major test. Okay. Now this is the thing that touches Orach Chaim. You guys familiar with this? This is in Orach Chaim. I think it's 115. I take my notes right. Kuf Tes Vav. Okay, you could correct me if I'm wrong. I didn't write it right. No, it's in 128. Sorry, it's in Orach Chaim 128. Kuf Kaf Ches. Okay. What does this have to do with this? Duchening. Kohen she'an nosei nashim ba'avira eino oved. A Kohen who is married to women in sin should not serve. Who is a Kohen permitted to marry? Zonah, Chalala, Grusha. Whatever those halachic terminology, divorcee, etc. Kohen should not marry those women. So now this Kohen is married to, Meir says, nosei nashim. Like we said before, sometimes you use a Hebrew term, it's plural. One wife is enough to disqualify him in this case. Just that's the grammatical thing. It's just like b'nei ta'aruvot means hostages, even though there might be just one ta'arovet, and b'nei pilagshim, even if there's just one pilegesh. The Kohen is married to a grusha, so this isn't uncommon. There are Kohanim who, whatever reason, feel that they need to marry a grusha because they're single and they have no one else to marry. So this is their sin. Ad sheyadi eno oved, he should not serve. Ad sheyadi ruhu beit din al dat rabim kedei shelo tielo hafara. This is the Gemara in the Choros. Says a Kohen in this situation shouldn't do it, and it talks about in the Gemara there. What's the exact page? I didn't write it down, but you can find it in that same parak. All these movement are mentioned in that parak in the Choros. It says here, until he takes an oath in Beis Din, they make him swear that he will not continue to sin. Shelo yosif lachato. Yadiruhu means he should not get any. They take him. The Beis Din basically takes him away from the temple courtyard, and they say if you want to continue serving, you have to take a solemn oath from now on, a solemn vow from now on, that you will have nothing to do with that woman you have married. And because he has nothing to do with that woman, if he takes on, Madir Hana'ah, he has to automatically divorce her. Once he takes this solemn oath in front of the court, and he does adas rabim. It means he can't have hafara. Hafara is you take a promise, you make a neder, but it's your responsibility to keep that neder. It's between you and yourself, so you could eventually go to get hafaras nadarim or hataras nadarim, right? In this case, because it's taken on behalf of the rabim, there is no hafara or hatara. The Beis Din is in charge of this oath. So he's basically said, you want to continue serving, you basically have to take an oath, which means that as soon as possible, you're going to get divorced. You'll have nothing more to do with this woman. Voved, and then he goes and serves. V'yoreid. This is an expression meaning he finishes his service, literally comes down from the altar, but not literally comes down from the altar. Umigaresh. And then he divorces his wife. Then he can continue serving. But it just points out that once he's taken this solemn vow to basically divorce his wife, he could go back to working in the temple already. Implying he shouldn't serve. Let's say this coin is a problem. He wants to work for the Chever Kadisha. He heard, rightly, that it's a big schus to do Chesed Shalemis. Except he also is a Kohen, so he shouldn't be doing that. He shouldn't be volunteering for Chever Kadisha. Pasul, so he is disqualified from serving. Ad she kapel of bevetin shelo yitamei, until he goes in front of the court and he accepts it upon himself. This he is adjured by the court. I will no longer go near Mason, except of course when the Torah commands him to for close relatives. Vim avar v'avad, and if he still infringes, he still sins and he still serves. Kodem sheyadiro sheyikabel, before he took it upon himself, or he took this oath. Vow, sorry, oath is swearing about what was. Vow means he's going to do in the future. Even though he's married to a woman in sin, he still has this gerusha around as his current wife. He still doesn't disqualify the service. Why? Because this is something the sages said. Just because a Kohen is married inappropriately to a woman to whom he is married, the Torah didn't say then therefore he can't serve. The sages enforce this. This is their punishment. So technically speaking, he has not disqualified the service. Now, here's the interesting thing. What disqualifies a Kohen from blessing the people? The Rambam just says here that this situation, the Kohen who's married to a Gerusha, for example, should not be serving in the temple. The sages have their own rules about this. What disqualifies a Kohen from saying the priestly blessing just in the synagogue? So the Rambam says, in prayer, the only thing that disqualifies someone from blessing the people is the sin. What is the sin? Well, there's mumim and sin. There's certain things that if he has stuff on his hands, his age, he has to be bar mitzvah, etc. And that says the sin. What are the sin according to the Rambam? He has killed a person or he has worshipped idols. A Kohen who's worshipped idols has disqualified himself. He's served in a temple not to God, has also disqualified himself. He's blemished himself. Or a Kohen who is haragat nefesh. That's the simple understanding of Gemara, without qualification, by the way. Doesn't matter if he did it beheter or not beheter. Doesn't matter if he killed a Gentile or a Jew. Doesn't matter if he killed a bad person. Doesn't matter if he killed a good person. As long as he haragat nefesh, Pinchas and Yehuda Maccabee, who killed God's enemies and served as high priests, could not utter the priestly blessing according to the Rambam. When it came time to duchen, they abstained. They went into the Holy of Holies and offered incense, but they did not raise their hands to bless the people because they had both killed people sometime in their life. Kohen haragas nefesh, that's the standard that the Rambam says. It's also what the Torah says. You find in Torah or Bar-Hayim, like I said, Mark 128, he echoes this and says that why we tell a Kohen just because something he's done in his history, he should no longer do an ensuing mitzvah. People want to say, this Kohen has a bad reputation. He used to eat treif all the time. He should not be blessing us. We're insulted by this Kohen's blessing. And the Torah says, he did an Avera. He can't do tshuva. You're telling him that because he did an Avera once in his life, or he got a reputation for doing Averas when he was a youngster, he was a bad teenager. Yes, unfortunately, he was hanging out with the wrong crowd when he was 14. That means he shouldn't do his job as a Kohen now? Does that make sense? So we hold like this halacha that the only thing that could disqualify a Kohen from uttering the priestly blessing is if the Kohen actually killed someone or worshipped idols. Make sense? But the problem is I opened up the Mishneh Berurah and you go to Orach Chaim Chav Ches, and what do you find there? Hold on 1 second. So now my phone's not charging and I want to get disconnected from you guys. We're basically doing this through the cell phone. So I have to. Okay, we're still online. I just want to get disconnected. Okay. Okay, we're still online. You go to Bar-Hayim and it says something very interesting. It says basically that a Kohen who is married inappropriately to a woman, basically this halacha here talks about a Kohen married to a grusha, a chalutza, a grusha, a zona, or a halala. Just like he doesn't serve in the temple, it says he should not utter the priestly blessing. So the Shulchan Aruch disqualifies a Kohen who killed, and a Kohen who worshipped idols, and a Kohen who's married inappropriately, as long as he still is married. Or what they want to do is he wants to duchen today, so the Beis Din comes and makes him take a solemn vow that he will divorce this woman, have nothing to do with her, and then he has to utter the priestly blessing, and then he goes home and divorces her. So my question is, why do they say this? It's kind of clear from the from the Mishnah. The Mishnah lists this in Bechoros among the things that disqualify a Kohen from serving in the temple. Yet they transpose this to the din of uttering the priestly blessing. I'll give you the sources here. The Beis Yosef says, it's the Mahari Abuav. Says a Kohen married to a divorcee should not bless or receive the first reading at the Torah as long as he's Omeid Bimirdo. Omeid Bimirdo means in a state of rebellion. He's rebelling against God by doing this Avera. And the Rashba has a similar tshuva there. So you see the Rashba Mari Abuav said a Kohen inappropriately married should not be raising his hands to bless the people in the synagogue. That's an everyday thing, by the way. So wait a minute. Where'd they get this from? Hold on 1 second. No, I don't want to download a new program. Thank you. It says here, the Beis Yosef continues, it says, because no poskim explicitly permit a Kohen to duchen while he's inappropriately married, and there are these two poskim who prohibit it explicitly, we follow them. Understand, that's one of the types of things that also not Torah Eretz Yisrael. There are Rishonim, poskim, who say a Kohen who's inappropriately married should not duchen. There are no Rishonim that the Beis Yosef knew of who explicitly disagree, even though we see that the Rambam and the Torah implicitly disagree. They had no havamina that this should disqualify a Kohen from duchening. So in Orach Chaim, Kuf Chavkasi says there that, and it's Mark 40. It's Sif Mem. Simon Kuf Chavches Sif Mem says that a Kohen who's, let's say, married to a divorcee should not duchen. And it basically has this halacha here. And the Mishnah Berurah explains why, because that idea. Not even the Mishnah Berurah points out that, by the way, it's a little bit difficult because Rishonim basically say that this halacha of disqualification is talking about a Kohen serving in the temple. It's not talking about disqualification from duchening, blessing the people. So that's a little bit of a difficult thing. I remember some guys here were talking about it. It came up a few months ago. There are some people who know the Shulchan Aruch, but they don't know that that's actually the Rishonim, and the straight shot in the Mishnah is not like that. Okay, so it's a difficult thing. So what would you do in your synagogue if you Chas v'Shalom had a Kohen like this? Remember, the Torah says, why do we allow Kohanim who committed certain sins to continue to bless the people? Because we don't want to tell them to do more things wrong. So yes, so they worshipped idols once, they killed once. Doesn't mean that they should forever never do mitzvahs. So this is a difficult thing. I hope this question never comes up, because it seems very clear, according to the Rambam and others, that doesn't disqualify this Kohanim from uttering the blessing. Good questions. We'll live this with the Tzarechiyun. Kohen Shavad, a Kohen who served in the temple, v'nivdak v'nimtzah halal, and then they check him. I mean, they're looking into it for whatever reason. I hope it's not because someone just said, "Hey, that guy is a yichus problem." So I'm basically calling him a mamzer or something like that. So, but it turns out he's a halal. A halal means descended from a marriage that should not have happened between a Kohen and one of these women. Okay, it could be a few generations beforehand, or it could be his very own father did it. Avodato k'sheira l'shavar. After the fact, b'diavad, l'shavar means b'diavad, his service is still valid. Ve'eno oved l'haba, but he should not serve in the future. He's halal means he's been hollowed out or desecrated. Okay, l'chalel is the opposite of l'kadesh. Ve'im avad lo chilel, and if he did serve, even though he shouldn't serve, he's a halal. He did not, even the halal did not chilel. He didn't invalidate the service, because it says, Barech Hashem chilo fal yadav tirtzeh. Moses' blessing to the tribe of Levi. God bless his valor, and accept the work, his handiwork. Afilu chulin shabo tirtzeh. Even the chulin, the secular stuff. Chulin is this. Chulin is there's a dot and a lamed in that word. There's not supposed to be a vav in the word chulin. It's a kubut. It's not a shuruk. Dot and a lamed to make up for the missing lamed of the shoresh. It's from the shoresh halal. Chulin means something that's been desecrated, deholified, hollowed out. So even that, technically speaking, a kohen who's a halal has not invalidated service. They shouldn't let him in. I met a guy a few years ago who was a proud halal, explaining, "Hi, my name is Ploni Cohen. My father's a Kohen. My mother's a Gioris. I'm a halal." It's like, oh, great. Okay, you're not even a Levi. So he doesn't do anything. Okay, interesting. Beit Din Gadol. I mentioned this last week. The High Court of the Jewish people, the Sanhedrin. Hayu Yoshvin Blishkara Gazit. They sat. That means they held court, literally, in the chamber of hewn stone, north side of the temple complex. Vikar Maseyam Atadir. I mentioned this before. The main and most frequent business of theirs is what? Shehein Yoshvim V'Danina Kunav Vodkim Kohanim B'Yuchusayin Uv Mumin. Basically, even though the Rambam says that's where Torah comes for all of Klal Yisrael, they're the ones who decide what Torah Shabbal Peh is. So, wow, that's what they do most of the time. The big questions. In reality, it's basically dealing with the Kohanim, their Yichus and their Mumin. They actually have to disqualify a Kohen, say, sorry, you're a reject, puts on black clothes, and he leaves the Azara. By the way, what's wrong with black clothes? Nowadays, I think that I went to they had a special sale of Haredish Malbush here, and Dafka, everything is black except for the shirts. It's like everything is black. No, in the sages' time, in biblical times, white was actually a sign of purity and dignified and holiness, etc., closeness to God, which is why Kohanim basically wore white all the time. And wearing black was a sign of mourning, or a sign of being even worse, in nidui. Okay, a person's don't touch me, I'm unclean, or I should not, I have to be ostracized. So very strange how things have basically flipped on their heads. I would hate to imagine that, God willing, this coming Yom Kippur, when the Kohen Gadol finishes his service, says he would put on his own clothes and go home afterwards, right? Kohen Gadol goes home for the day as Yom Kippur is closing. He finishes the Avodah of Mincha, and they make it basically a Yom Kippur parade. The last 2 hours of parade, it's just him trying to get home, right? And I would hope that our high priest does not go back to his lishka and put on a black garb like the chief rabbis do. That would be inappropriate for Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol should continue wearing garb that befits a Kohen Gadol. Even if he's not wearing the outfit of Kohen Gadol, he should wear white. He should wear. It's Yom Kippur also. I hope that. I've seen that. There's rabbis here, Sephardic rabbis. Yom Kippur, they don't wear kittles like we do. They don't have necessarily. They have white talisim. I saw it was very funny. It was very strange. This minyan I davened at had a significant Ashkenazic population there. Like a quarter was Ashkenazim because of the convenience and the place where to do it. It was a Vasikim minyan. The Sephardic Rav there was wearing bekasha, a long frock and a Hamburg, and black pants and black tie, like he does on Shabbos. He was wearing his Shabbos clothes. They have no tradition to wear different clothes in Kippur, and a white tallis, so kulo black. And the Ashkenazic fellows there, myself included, were wearing white yarmulkes, kittles, white pants, white socks, white talisim, everything all white. Very strange. Okay. If you found a Kohen who was found perfect and kosher, he would put on his white clothes, and that means the big day kahuna, and he would go into the Azara, and he would serve with his brethren, the Kohanim. It says he would celebrate this thing. Rambam left the celebration part out. And they would also stand up and say a thing like, blessed is God who chose Aaron and found no blemish among his seed, etc. I don't know why Rambam left this part out. So he's a kosher Kohen. Family's fine. Nimtza bo mum. But I don't know, he's got some sort of mum. He's got the yabelet, the garav, etc. So he goes to the chamber of the wood. Metalea etzim lamaracha. So you should be checking the wood for worms, deworming the wood. By not necessarily worms, a lot of things are they're not genetically worms. They're just the larvae of bugs. Most bugs, when they hatch, are larvae. Larvae look like worms, like maggots. They look like worms. That's Chazal's word for everything. Even though soon they will pupate and they'll grow appendages and stuff. They won't look like worms. They'll be bugs. They'll have exoskeleton, wings maybe, etc. But at the beginning, they all look like worms. So that's the word. That's the word here. Even termites, they have a stage in their beginning process where they look like worms. So they take out the worms. And he also gets shares of the kachim. He can eat sacrificial meat with his beis av that they serve. So he gets a piece of the sacrificial meats. And he eats it. The bread of his God. Remember I said last week, Kohanim consume the korban. That's part of the consumption of the korban. So you shouldn't be surprised when you have Nevi'im offering angels food, and it's a poetic description of sacrifice. Feeding the angels is like offering God sacrifice. Of course, feeding the Kohanim is a form of sacrifice. So of course, feeding the angels can be a form of sacrifice. And so these Kohanim get to eat. Let's see a little bit. Let's go into the next chapter or drop. Even though really we should start the chapter every day, but there's more to see here. Here's a list of the blemishes. It's good to also to have illustrations describing these things. Here are the blemishes that are in common. Okay, animals and people in common. That means they're common. They happen all the time. It means it's the common denominator. The type of things that blemishes that would disqualify both men and animals. Here's the list. There's 50 blemishes that would disqualify both man and beast. Here they are. There are 5 in the ear. Someone who has a problem in his schus. So you look over here in the Makbili, he says the schus is different than what the Koran says. This part over here, the outer part of the earlobe, he calls schus, but Makbili is pointing there in the arrow. See that? It's this thing on the inside over here. Nifgam means, according to this picture, there's a part of it missing. It's like a crack, like a piece of it's gone on the outer side. Okay? If you would run your finger around here, normally it's something smooth and whole, so it doesn't stop. But it's the same way they check the shechita knife. If there's a pagam in the shechita knife, there's a nick, so your fingernail will get caught there. So there's missing a piece of the ear here. Like you see the picture over there. Good. Aval ha'ora mukaflas kusa ozen aimbo mum, beinikav beinifgam beinistak. If it's just the skin, remember this thing is basically the cartilage. A piece of the cartilage is missing. If just a piece of the skin, so that's okay. Might even heal. If it has a crack in it, it means it's cut. Someone would make an incision over here, cut into the cartilage. So there's nothing missing. There's no pagam there. Maybe this will close up. But for now, he's got a hole. He's got a cut through his ear. And you can also see that in the picture. He has a small karshina size. Karshina is a plant that they used to feed to animals. And he has a hole in his ear. Wait a minute. A guy pierced his ear. Some people put piercings through their ear. That would disqualify them. Kohanim are not supposed to pierce their ears, apparently. How do women pierce their ears? Because women are not Kohanim. Okay? But by the way, they call this is not schus. This is, I think, called the tnuch, the earlobe. So if you put there's not the hard cartilage, it's just more fleshy over there. If you put a hole through your tnuch, that'd be kosher, technically speaking. That's not the schus. Okay? Next. Assuming you were Kohen. Next. Bei nekev agol, bei nekev aroch. Whether it's a single, like a point, so it's a circular hole, or it's a nekev aroch. It's elongated, the hole. As long as it's the right size, it is a moon. His ear has dried up. It's basically like what's the word? It's necrosis of the ear, basically. The blood is cut off from the ear. It's basically dried up and like gonna fall off. Okay? Yeah, kind of crazy. That happens. How do you know it's already dead? Because you poke it and no blood comes out. There's no blood in there. Okay? Yes. This happens to an animal also. Mishayato is no kfula l'shtayim. Basically, it looks like it has a double ear. They show a picture there of the lamb with such a thing. See? We don't have a picture. Some kid goats actually have a lot of extra skin. It looks like the way they flop, they have like doubleness. Shnei schusin means they even have two schusin, which is this piece again, the outer. It's more than just extra skin. Volume ein la ella schus echad. If it's really just one schus and it's just folded over, so that's kosher. This type of thing doesn't happen to people that often. But I remember they were talking about a phenomenon called cauliflower ear. What's cauliflower ear? You guys heard about it? It used to happen to boxers. People get hit, take makas in their cartilage. It can happen in your nose. It can happen in your ear. You hit them up really good. They heal, but they get all puffy and they like stay like that. They just heal with extra cartilage. Sometimes you see a person who suffered facial injuries he has a permanently much bigger nose or much bigger ears. So that type of thing can happen in this case. It could lead to a person getting it, suffering trauma to the ears. You don't want that to happen. So, by the way, someone asked about boxing and other sports. Sports are not for Jews because they're a waste of time. Someone said it's a good thing. You pick up the Jewish newspaper, even though I'm not a big fan of a lot of the Jewish newspapers because of Lashon Hara and also they're misguiding people with regards to halacha. I'm not a fan of them. At least because of Jewish culture, there's not the usual stuff. Israeli newspapers are very surprised. You know what they have? A rechilas section. That's gossip. American newspaper has a gossip section. So the secular Israeli newspaper has the rechilas section. And the znus section. These things exist. And the sports section. A proper Jewish newspaper doesn't have such thing. The Jewish press used to have the scores. The men play softball in the morning. So I remember this guy was my neighbor, was the one who recorded the scores. He was the commissioner of the baseball league, the Orthodox Bungalow Baseball League. So they put in Jewish press, the Jewish press in the New York area would have the team from this bungalow colony beat that team by a score of this and that. Who cares? It's just something they did as filler because the guy who run the advertisements for the Jewish press needed some filler material. There's no real sports section in a Jewish newspaper. Jews don't care about those things. So baseball is something that a lot of Rebbeim actually liked. Rav Lichtenstein liked baseball. Rav Rakefet in Jerusalem talks about baseball all the time. So baseball is not a contact sport. You play baseball, you're not gonna cripple yourself. But there's other sports. Baseball, tennis, and basketball. People live healthy lives. They're not supposed to be contact sports, right? But hockey, this is so strange. Basketball. If one basketball player throws a punch at the other, oy gewalt. Thank God that's concerned. That's a bad thing, right? Unsportsmanlike. It gets suspended. They'll pay him, and maybe he'll get arrested. For some reason, hockey, they could beat each other's brains out. Oh, that's fine. They're not arrested. They punch each other. Who gave them a heter to do that? Who gave Goyim a heter to punch each other and knock each other's teeth out? Hockey itself leads to terrible injuries. Kal v'chomer, what they call football in America, real football, not poverty ball, not soccer, which for some reason foreigners like. Real football, despite the fact that it's a real legitimate sport, is usser. You can't do that to each other. They end up brain dead. They crush each other. You have men who are at the prime of their lives, the greatest athletes. They're lucky if they make it through a football season without some sort of crippling injury. Who gave them a heter for that? Alachas kama v'chama, so-called blood sports, boxing. You can't do that. That's nothing. You shouldn't give any of your money to things. You shouldn't watch these things. They should be told not to do it. Why? Because they're just told them they could try to murder each other. And achas kama for other so-called sports, mixed martial arts, kickboxing, things like that. There is no heter for people to do this to each other, and it causes terrible movement. And I can't understand why anybody would let their children engage in such a thing. You want to play sports, play freeze tag, ride a bike, or basketball or baseball, tennis. But don't do any of these contact sports that have tremendous risk, and it's assumed that people are going to be hitting each other. It makes no sense, just makes no sense. But by the way, this thing they used to do. The Romans, what they had gladiators. Basically, someone had to die. So at least, and Chazal said you can't go attend those things. You can't sit in there. It says you can't go to their circuses and theaters. Why? Because it's usually involved in avodah zarah and bloodshed. So nowadays, if you go see a guy juggling, a bunch of clowns shooting seltzer and pies at each other, that's not what Chazal had in mind. So you could be malam and schusim going to the circus nowadays. There's a kosher circus they have. Haredi circus for Chol Hamoed, they have that. That's fine. There's no avodah zarah and there's no blood sport. But in the olden days, that's what it was. Everybody sit in the arena, in the what was it, the forum, and watch people, maybe die. That's bad. You can't do that. And therefore, they still do this nowadays. It's still forms of blood sport. And so don't do it. Shlosha baris shel ayin. There's 3 blemishes that could affect the ris. That means the eyelids. That's what the risim are, the eyelashes. Elohim, misha nikev ris me risein of b'choshehu. Person has a hole in his eyelid. Doesn't matter. Koshehu. Any hole in the eyelid, just one of the eyelids, that's a moon. Misha nistak ris me risein of b'choshehu. Nistak means he has a crack in his eyelid. You can see also a picture there. There's a question: does the crack start from away from the eye? Is it at the part where it touches the eye, or not? Okay. Misha nifgam ris me risein of b'choshehu. So it's missing a part of his eyelid. There's a piece just bit off over there. See, here's a picture of all the different things. Thank you, Korain, to illustrate the nifgam, the nistak, and the nikev. Next, u'shlasha mumin elu bichlal charutz. That's what the Torah says. The Kohen who is a charutz. Ha'amur b'Torah. That's the one explicit. It means a problem with the eyelid. And next halacha, shmona ba'ayin, 8 blemishes within the eye. Eluhin ha'iver, the person who's blind. Bein be'achat meinav, bein b'shtehen. By the way, some animals you can tell they're blind. How you can tell an animal's blind? Well, if an animal's blind in both eyes, you can tell it. It won't know where it's going. Person's blind in one eye, he'll tell you, or you'll see that eye ain't working. You get it checked by the doctor. Nowadays, you check our eyes, so you'll see. Mi she'eno ro'eh b'shteinav o b'achat mehem af pi she'en nireh bahen shinu klal mechamat she'yardu mayim kvuim keneged ro'otov. In this case, the first one is talking about someone who you could see that their eyes don't work. In this case, it means that the waters come down from them. It says, it's as though waters come down in front of his vision. What does it mean? It's a type of infection that basically caused it that he can't see anymore. There's something wrong, like, I don't know, cataracts and things like that. Okay? It's not that he's blind. By the way, some people blind, it's just that it's so blurry. By the way, they glasses like we have nowadays basically help our eyes focus. There's technically speaking, if it's a matter of focus, then you just have to have the right lens to refocus. But some people just get so blurry, eventually it just goes away. Sometimes you could actually have damage to the nerves, the eye, it could be poked out. That's a lot different. Okay? There's also different forms of astigmatism. So there's different ways a person could not be seeing. That's the point over here. Someone who doesn't see with his eyes, or one of them, means it's very blurry, like I just said. He has certain things just blocking it, cataracts, floaters, etc. So there's a lot of different things that can affect the eye and its vision. He has a grape-like thing in his eye. He could see, but there's this growth in his eye. Kind of scary, right? What does it say? You mentioned here? Yeah. Okay. It could be caused by an infection, by the way. Someone has a bulge in his eye. I've never seen that, but I think it looks pretty bad. Person with extra flesh within his eye. There's an illustration of this. Until it's covering some of the black of the eye. Okay? Something is sticking into there. We'll hold it here. I've met Kohanim who unfortunately have these something wrong with their eyes. But you can understand here, basically these 3 categories. What about Kohen with glasses? He's basically legally blind. The glasses don't help. Okay? What if he got the surgery? So apparently he's not a mum anymore. There are many different types of eye surgery. There are people who are just so blurry, they get the surgery and then they see again. There are people who get cataract surgery and they can see again. But before that, they fall into these categories. Make sense? Remember, this person basically is sanverim kfuim. If a person is so blurry that he needs glasses, or he's so astigmatized, needs glasses, so just because he walks around with glasses, he has a very high prescription. What's the highest a prescription can go? I don't know. We should give an optometrist here. But there's some people who basically are legally blind. Now we have ways to help them with external factors, contact lenses. I would imagine that this would be a question for the Sanhedrin because it's implied here that that's not good enough. Because he can't see, then he should not be serving. However, one of the things we're going to see also disqualified as Kohen is, let's say, bad breath. He's chronic halitosis. So they say if he's chewing ginger or pepper or something, mint leaves, the entire time he's serving, so that gets rid of the bad breath, he could serve. So too, you say, he might be halachically blind and fall into one of these three categories, but because he's wearing his contact lenses or his glasses, he can see, so he should be able to serve. So, like I said, I would make an argument both ways. I'd like to see what a Sanhedrin would say. That will bring us to the end here. We'll pick this up next week, and yeah, God willing, we'll have answers to all these and every other question. Oh, you just sent me where we are? Okay. Sava Shabbat Shalom. Be well, and see you next time.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.